I caught my wife plotting with my best friend to drain my bank account and start a new life together. I exposed them publicly, had them arrested. I'm 35, and I thought my life was on track. I had a decent job, a wife of 6 years, and what I believed to be a solid group of people around me. My wife was 32, and we'd been through a lot together, or so I thought. Then there's my best friend, or at least the guy I called my best friend, someone I've known since college. He's the kind of guy who can talk his way into or out of anything. People loved him. I did too. He was like a brother to me. Turns out, he and my wife had a lot more going on than I ever imagined. It all started with a text message. One night, my wife left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to shower. Normally, I wouldn't even glance at it, but a notification popped up, and I couldn't help but see it. It was from him. The preview said something about deleting chats after transferring money. That was weird. He'd been around more often lately, and she'd been acting strange for weeks. Being overly protective of her phone, taking calls in the other room, disappearing for hours forbearance. It was like I didn't even exist in her world sometimes. I stared at her phone for a minute. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something felt off. Against my better judgment, I picked it up and unlocked it. What I found made my stomach turn. Their texts weren't just about transferring money. They were planning to drain our bank account. The two people I trusted most in the world were stealing from me behind my back. They'd already been skimming small amounts, but they were gearing up for the big finale. The plan was to empty everything, leave the car at the airport, and skip town together while I was at work. The messages were disgusting. They mocked me, called me predictable. He said, "He'll never see it coming," and she replied, "He's so clueless. I'll make sure everything looks normal till we're gone." My wife, the person who promised to have my back, was doing this to me. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time to process, to figure out what to do. I screenshotted everything, transferred it to my own phone, and locked hers back like nothing had happened. That night, I barely said a word to her. She asked if I was tired, and I nodded. Inside, I was trying to keep from losing it. The next day, I took the evidence to a lawyer. I wanted to be smart about this. He told me to freeze my accounts immediately and document everything. He said not to tip them off yet. I had to let them think I was still in the dark. It wasn't easy. Friend showed up that week like nothing was wrong. He even suggested a trip to Vegas. "Just the boys," he said, grinning. My wife started talking about how we should plan a romantic vacation. "We need some time to reconnect," she said, all smiles. I wanted to scream at both of them, but I played along. In the meantime, I started paying closer attention to their behavior. It was like I was seeing them clearly for the first time. My friend wasn't just trying to rob me. He'd been walking all over me for years. He borrowed money constantly and never paid it back. When I'd bring it up, he'd laugh and say, "Don't be so uptight. Real friends don't nickel and dime each other." He treated my house like his personal hangout, showing up unannounced, eating my food, even hosting poker nights while I was away. Once, I came home to find my place trashed because he'd had a few guys over. And my wife, she'd been manipulating me too, always pushing for things she claimed were for us. An expensive SUV, luxury home upgrades, gifts for her parents that cost a fortune. She'd make me feel guilty if I pushed back, saying stuff like, "Don't you want to invest in our future?" I realized these weren't isolated incidents. They'd been testing how far they could push me for years, chipping away at my boundaries until they thought they could get away with anything. Over the next few days, I put my plan into action. I hired a private investigator to gather more evidence. I froze my accounts, set up alerts for any attempts to access them, and made sure all our shared financial information was secure. I also started preparing for the confrontation. When I finally overheard my wife on the phone late one night, it confirmed everything. She was whispering, but I caught enough to know they were finalizing their plan. "Once the accounts are empty, we're out. He won't even know till it's too late." I wanted to kick the door down and scream at her, but I held back. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a messy outburst. I was going to make them pay the smart way. The day of reckoning came faster than I expected. They were planning to leave that weekend, so I had to act quickly. I invited a few mutual friends and family members over under the pretense of needing help with a home project. These were people who knew my wife and friend well, people who'd have a front row seat to the truth. When friend showed up, he was all smiles. My wife looked a little nervous, but played it cool. I waited until everyone was settled before I brought out the stack of evidence. All right, I said, I think it's time we all had a little chat. Friend looked confused. My wife frowned and said, "What's going on?" I laid everything out, the texts, the bank records, the late-night phone calls. Every detail of their plan was there in black and white. The room went dead silent as I talked. My wife's face turned pale, and Friend's smug grin disappeared. "You two thought you could rob me blind and get away with it," I said. "But here's the thing, you're not as smart as you think you are." They tried to deny it at first. Friend stammered something about how I was misinterpreting the texts, and my wife said, "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," I said. "And it's over." I called the police right there. I'd already filed a report and coordinated with them, so they were ready to step in. Watching the cops slap cuffs on my so-called best friend and my wife was surreal. Friend started shouting, "This is a mistake. You can't do this." My wife just started crying, saying, "Please, let's talk about this." I didn't say another word to either of them. After they were hauled away, the room was silent. Everyone looked stunned. A couple of my friends came up to me, saying they couldn't believe what they'd just seen. "How long has this been going on?" one of them asked. I told them everything, sparing no detail. Most of them were supportive, but a few admitted they'd noticed things off about my wife or friend before, but didn't think it was their place to say anything. That night, I sat down with a beer in my now quiet house. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel on edge. I felt angry, sure, but mostly relieved. They were out of my life, and I could start cleaning up the mess they left behind. It wasn't over, though. The fallout was worse than I expected. Friend had the audacity to call me from jail, trying to smooth things over. "Come on, man," he said. "You're really gonna let this ruin everything? We've been through so much together." I hung up on him without a word. My wife wasn't any better. Through her lawyer, she tried to claim she'd been coerced into the scheme, that she was a victim too. "I didn't want to do it," she said in one of her messages. "He made me. Please don't ruin my life over this." I wasn't buying it. She was just as guilty, if not more. She knew exactly what she was doing when she plotted to steal from me, and she didn't care. Then there were the mutual friends who started to take sides. Some people tried to defend my wife, saying she'd always been under a lot of pressure or that she made a mistake. Others called Friend a snake and said they'd always felt something was off about him. The drama was exhausting, but I kept my focus on what mattered, protecting myself and making sure they faced the consequences. The legal process took months, but it was worth it. Both of them were charged with fraud and theft. They tried to cut deals, pointing fingers at each other, but the evidence was overwhelming. My lawyer made sure I got back every cent they'd stolen, and the divorce was finalized without her getting a dime more than she was entitled to. Even after everything, the entitlement didn't stop. My wife tried to claim she deserved to keep the car because it was her dream vehicle. Friends sent messages through mutual friends, asking if I could forgive him and help with his legal fees. It was like they thought I'd just forget what they'd done and go back to being the doormat they thought I was. I shut it all down. I sold the car, cut off anyone who sided with them, and focused on rebuilding my life. I won't lie, it's been hard. Losing two people I trusted so deeply shook me. But in the end, I'm glad I found out the truth. They thought they could walk all over me and get away with it, but they underestimated me. I'm done being the nice guy who lets people take advantage of him. This whole thing taught me a lot about trust and boundaries. I've learned to pay attention to red flags and to stand up for myself when something doesn't feel right. I've got a long way to go, but I'm determined to come out of this stronger. And to anyone reading this, let me just say, don't ignore the signs. If someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. It could save you a lot of pain in the long run.